from the heart of the Shire, through the depths of Moria, to the ends of Middle-earth. It's the Babylon Bee reads The Lord of the Rings. With your hosts, Kyle Mann and Dan Coates.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lord of the Rings podcast.
Yeah.
What are we called? Babylon Bee reads the Lord of the Rings.
Babylon Bee reads.
I'm Kyle Mann, your host, with my co-host guy.
Coast.
No.
Dan.
Dan Coates.
Yeah, I'm Dan.
My host, Dan Coates.
Yep.
And our special guest host, who's been with us a couple episodes now, Jonathan Watson. He's the grand poobah of theonering.com.
Yep.
That's right. Yep.
Not .net.
Not .net. Also this
Guys, they're going to come after me.
It's like, it's like the Uruk-hai versus the orcs. There's a rivalry.
There's a slight subset.
Yeah.
Right. So
Perhaps stronger.
today we're going through Three is Company, which is chapter 3 of Fellowship of the Ring. So far, if you've watched the movies, it's been fairly close, and we were just talking about how this chapter is one of the early divergences between the book and the film. A lot of it is time compression, and a lot of it is, they just had to cut things out for time's sake or whatever. But so when we left off at the end of Shadow of the Past, that was the big exposition dump where Gandalf tells us everything that's going on, and Frodo and Sam are recruited to take the ring and get it somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. So this is where we pick up here in Three is Company.
I like that. I like that Tolkien's like, okay, chapter 3. I got to put 3 in the title.
Yeah,
so
that was definitely intentional.
Yeah.
Literary humor.
Yeah, right.
So what happens in this chapter is that Frodo has to get out of the Shire after what Gandalf told him in chapter 2. But he's got to get away in a way where he can slip out unnoticed. He doesn't want to make it obvious that he's leaving.
Yeah, and so this is one of the big things they spend a lot of time on is how are we going to make it look like Frodo is not, grabbing the super weapon and charging out, because that would be strange if this hobbit all of a sudden just left for no reason. Mm-hmm. So he moves, the whole thing is he plans this move to another part of the Shire, right?
Right.
And sells Bag-End.
Crick Hollow by Brandy Book. The Brandy Book.
Yep.
Brandy Book, yeah.
So he sells his house and moves out. And the whole thing is, I'm going to stay there for like 6 months, and then we'll quietly leave.
Yeah, yeah. But in the meantime, he's kind of hanging around the Shire. They're not really leaving. Gandalf is even there for over 2 months at the time. So the departure is really sort of, it feels slow. Even, it kind of feels like, get out, don't stick around anymore. But even Frodo, I think, has a hard time leaving, even though, he's ready to go and Gandalf is telling him he should go. Mm-hmm. Neither of them seem completely... Like the urgency that you feel in the movies isn't really here in the books as much, but it builds rather than it's like an instant firecracker, like get out right now type of moment.
Yeah, and I think it was always unclear to me, and I don't know if this was a fault of the movies or the book or what, but where it was always unclear to me how much Sauron knew and what he was looking for, because he's obviously inquiring, and we meet the Ringwraiths for real here, where they start asking around the Shire. Yeah. But it's not like he's just like, I'm going to go crush the Shire and invade it. I know they have the ring. It's like he's asking around. Yeah. So it's not really clear to me, but that may be the difference in the urgency between the book and the film. Is in the film it makes it look like he's figured it out. I'm coming here. Right. And this it may be more like he's got a suspicion, similar to how Gandalf has a suspicion, but he's not like 100% sure. Until he gives that whole exposition dump to Frodo in the previous chapter.
So Gandalf gets spooked by something he hears and just suddenly takes off and tells Frodo. I love how Gandalf is always popping in, popping out, like always when you need him, like, oh, now he's gone again.
Right.
So he takes off and tells Frodo, hey, I'll be back in time for your birthday, and then we'll leave the Shire together. And I think as it becomes clear in this chapter, that doesn't end up happening.
So in a lot of ways, this chapter really is the beginning of the quest. And early on in the chapter, Frodo says, I have been so taken up with the thoughts of leaving Bag-End and of saying farewell that I have never even considered the direction. For where am I to go? And by what shall I steer? What is to be my quest? Bilbo went to find a treasure, there and back again. but I go to lose one and not return as far as I can see. And then Gandalf says, well, the ultimate quest, we have to find the cracks of doom. He goes, but that may not be for you. And then he recommends that he goes to Rivendell. So now we kind of have the setup. Now we know we have a little direction. We know where the stories are going. He's got to get to Rivendell. And again, if you've read The Hobbit, you've got there's a little echo there. You know, we talked about how he writes kind of in these cycles of there was this hero 50 years ago who did this, you know, with Bilbo. And he's echoing that now with his quest, where he's departing on his 50th birthday to go to Rivendell, just like Bilbo did. Yeah. And then that cool twist of like, he went to go find treasure, I'm going to lose treasure. So we have a really interesting, unique subversion of the hero's quest here.
Yeah. I like the life lesson in that little passage that you read where he says, you know, I go to lose one and not return as far as I can see. And Gandalf goes, well, you can't see very far.
Yeah.
He's like, you don't know. Just take one step at a time. You know?
Yeah.
I love that little insight that Gandalf gives him.
Yeah, and again, we see just the stout-heartedness of the hobbits, that he's like, I might not come back, and here we go, you know?
Yeah.
It's almost like Gandalf wants to trust Frodo more than he feels like he should right now. He says, you know, at any rate, you're not ready yet for that long road. And so it's telling us right away that Frodo is going to go on a mission, but man, we don't know if he can do it. And so Gandalf is still like, the trust between Gandalf and Frodo isn't as complete in the books as it is in the movies right off the bat. And so you kind of see a little bit of tension between them still hanging out.
We also get the mention of Frodo's friends that come to stay and help him with the packing, Fredegar Bolger and Folko Boffin, the fatty, good old fatty, and Pippin Took and Merry Brandybuck, of course, become important characters. I had one of the Lord of the Rings board games, and it had 4 characters, you know, Sam, Frodo, Merry, Pippin, and the 5th one was Fatty. And I was like, did they just make this guy up for they ran out of...
Right. Yeah, Bob down in the mailroom decided to call him Fatty. And they ran out of names. No.
Real character, yeah. I do enjoy all the humor here in this chapter with Lobelia Sackville-Baggins. Yeah, that's just like always hilarious. Yeah. She comes in and she starts doing an inventory.
She's got the list.
She got the list and says Frodo did not offer her any tea.
Right. Yeah, and before that, they're going through everything, and the dining room was bare except for the tables and chairs. But the food was good and there was good wine. Frodo's wine had not been included in the sale to the Sackville-Baggins. Even though he's not going to be able to take it with him, he's like, she's not getting it.
Yeah. He's like, I got a good home for this.
Yeah.
They have their last...
Maybe that's why it took him so long to leave the Shire. There was food and wine to go through.
That would be very Hobbit-like, for sure. Yeah. And they say they have their last meal at Bag End and they leave the washing up for Lobelia. Yeah. Which is just fantastic. There's all these dirty plates just completely stacked up in the sink.
And then when they finally do end up taking off, don't they find Sam in the beer cellar? He's saying goodbye to the beer barrel or whatever.
That's fantastic. You know, we had a commenter who was actually reading Lord of the Rings for the first time, and I'm sure that'll come up in the mailbag section, but he said something to the effect of, I actually don't like the hobbits because they're so petty. And I think that there's actually quite insightful and intentional on Tolkien's part that the Sackville-Bagginses and the Bagginses are squabbling over spoons and
the little things. Yeah.
And the little things, and I think to Tolkien that was a good thing, and that was a human thing to just have these little local concerns, and they're not trying to conquer the world. They're not fighting over territories. They're fighting over spoons, and I think there's something human in there.
Right. And in the end, they still have a relationship.
Yeah.
they may hate each other, but they have to live together, right? And they still figure it out. Maybe that's a life lesson for us, too. But yeah.
Okay, so we get introduced to the Ringwraiths. As they're leaving, they hear...
maybe it's when voice. It's when Frodo steps out.
Frodo wandered around. He's wandering around because the house has been sold. It's like his last moments in Bag End, and he hears down the road the old gaffer talking to someone. It says the other voice was strange and somehow unpleasant. And the gaffer tells him Baggins has gone away. He's not here. Yeah. So this is a little different from the films where we have the Ringwraiths just like storming through and like, I'm going to chop your head off, and where at least in terms of the time scale, where that doesn't happen right away. They're just kind of like walking around. They're trying to conceal that they're evil. They're just like a guy in a dark cloak that just says, "Hey, do you know where the Baggins?" I don't know what they talk like. Hey, you know where the Baggins are?
Yeah, and I feel like you get the sense that this, there's one Ringwraith here, and it feels like Sauron has put his fingers out into Middle Earth to try and find out where it was.
Right.
He has an idea of where to go, but it's not like they know right away where to go. In the same way that Gandalf doesn't know right away that they have to leave instantly because they're in imminent danger. They're still trying to make their way through it all, and so the Ringwraith is putting his feelers out and trying to see where the ring might be.
Yeah, and I like how super creepy it is that he's just down the road and you can hear him. He's just having a conversation.
And I realize, Tolkien never, the whole conversation between the Gaffer and the Ringwraith is only the Gaffer. It's the Gaffer responding, and you never hear anything. There's no conversation with Ringwraith. It makes it even weirder that, he's having a conversation that he only hears through the Gaffer's responses. Right. Because he can't actually hear the Ringwraith. Yeah,
he just hears like a strange voice, but it doesn't say he can make out what it's saying. So they actually take off on the journey here. We have this bit with Sam in the backpack and talking about how he can carry more. And
he's lying, saying, "Oh, I could carry a bit more." And I love that quote from Frodo where he's like, he's got everything on his back, and he's like, "I pity snails and all who carry their homes on their back." And what I can do. Just they have all this wit and banter between them all, and it's just so good. It's so good to read stuff like that.
We have great foreshadowing and just narrative moment here where he says, "I wonder if I shall ever look down into that valley again," as they crest the hill and head out. And that's, obviously that's something for us to find out here. And that's
so they kind of take like a side road. It seems like they don't go down the main road and through the valley. They kind of go up and around, and now they're like on a side road.
Maybe we can put that map up.
Yeah, we'll get that map going.
Yeah, we see where they actually walked.
I found it interesting that Tolkien always makes the point that the hobbits are completely silent. And yet they sing along the road. And
it even says something to the effect like even the animals didn't notice them. And
then the animal notices him actually later, which is interesting. But hobbits are supposed to be a fork of humanity, right? They're not like a separate being. They're supposed to be humans. So, but they clearly have some sort of connection with the environment that lets them become part of it. And so when they pass, they can pass completely silently. And so even the elves really didn't notice them, as we'll see down the road.
Yeah. So and I do like, we see this, how these hobbits oscillate between being like these brave adventurers and just being like, I just want to go home. It's a very normal human thing. It says, the morning came and Frodo found that there was a tree root that had made a hole in his back. And he says, walking for pleasure, why didn't I drive? And all my beautiful feather beds are sold to the Sackville-Bagginses. These tree roots would do them good.
So this is the first chapter that kind of sets up the same pattern throughout the rest of the book. It's kind of like that march, rest, eat, march, fight. So you start getting a sense of that.
We're starting to get that cycle in here for sure. The beautiful, insightful passage where they sing they speak. Frodo says, the road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. That song that we already know. And then he talks about what Bilbo used to say. He used to often say there was only one road, and it was like a great river. Its springs were at every doorstep, and every path was its tributary. It's a dangerous business, Frodo, going out your door. You step into the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to. And I just love this because he gives this, obviously Tolkien is kind of using Frodo as his mouthpiece to give us this theme of this book, these journeys and these adventures. And then Pippin goes, well, the road won't sweep me anywhere for an hour at least, unslinging his back. And I love that he just has this, they're constantly swinging between like being adventurers and like, I'm tired, We can all relate to the hobbits with that. Yeah.
So this is where the rider kind of catches up with them.
Yeah.
And then so they get off the road because they don't want to be seen.
Yeah, so they see a black horse coming along. On it sitting a large man. They can't see his face.
Yeah.
So these ringwraiths have no physical form, no corporeal form, right? But they kind of take on this like presence when they can like throw a cloak around themselves and kind of appear as a man. You still don't see anything, which is really interesting.
Yeah, very creepy. And then there's the detail in there where it's smelling. it's
It's
smelling
sniffing,
for something.
Snuffling.
And then there's something in Frodo that he wants to hide, but there's something inside that doesn't want to hide.
Yeah.
And you kind of start seeing. I think the movie does portray that pretty well.
he's trying
Where
to put
there's that struggle of like wanting the ring wanting to go back. It seems like.
Yeah, and then Sam goes, "Oh yeah, I remember that guy. He was back in the Shire."
Like he just forgot to mention it.
And then Frodo's like, "Why didn't you say something?" So they keep walking, not along the road, and we get to this beautiful song. I think they did end up adapting it in the movies. Yeah, my favorite line, "Home is behind, the world ahead, and there are many paths to tread, through shadows to the edge of night, until the stars are all alight." And I also like that line earlier, it says, "We'll take the hidden paths that run towards the moon or to the sun." Just fantastic.
Yeah, music is such an integral part, or lyricism, music, poetry is such an integral part of Lord of the Rings and in the entire cosmology of Middle Earth, of Arda, of Ea. And I think you guys mentioned this before in a previous podcast where, the entire world was created by song.
Right.
And so song is like interwoven into the very fabric of the earth. And so when, in other parts of the Silmarillion, when the light has gone out, not just the light, but song has gone out of the world, right? And so that's where I think when there is singing, there is a connection to the earth. There's a connection to your maker. There's a connection to everything else around you. And so it might just be that's a little more subtle, maybe. But I think that's one of the reasons why Tolkien likes song so much, because he realized the creativity of that. There's a creation aspect to it, and we can go into like his essay on fairy stories where he talks about subcreation and all this other sort of stuff. But creating a song is like touching a little bit part of the importance of the earth in a way, and importance of being a creator yourself. And so you see so much music in here, and sometimes you wonder, and you're like, would you just get on with the story for once? But I think Tolkien took a lot of pleasure in writing that, even though he may not have been the best poet, right? He took a lot of pleasure in writing the songs and writing the entire stories of like Beren and Luthien in meter. So
I think when I read this originally, or when I tried to read it as a kid, I think I'd always get to those parts where it's like, what?
Yeah,
2 pages of a song? Skip that. And now as I go back,
can't we just go back to One Ring to find?
Yeah.
It's only like 3 lines.
Now that I'm a little bit older, and like I really appreciate what you're saying, how it's kind of like that connection back to creation, connection back to their creator, and as a kid, you're just like, where's the battle scene? Where's the swords?
Right. Right.
So we're kind of coming to the last big event of this chapter, which is the Elves. We meet Gildor. And there's a kind of lengthy section at the end where they talk about how they're talking to the Elves. Frodo's getting information from the Elves. But first, what happens is we see another Black Rider. And it says, it looked like the black shade of a horse led by a smaller black shadow. The black shadow stood close to the point where they had left the path, and it swayed from side to side. Frodo thought he heard the sound of snuffling. The shadow bent to the ground and then began to crawl towards him. And so we have this very creepy, cloaked guy just along the ground towards you. Like
Pterodactyl.
That is so creepy. And all of a sudden it stops and retreats. And the elves have shown up. So we have elves kind of rescuing them by chance, I think, right? Or fate.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, Sam is now having his wishes, all his wildest dreams.
Meeting the elves. And it makes that point where he said, it's a little bit further in, where that's the chief event of his life, right? Sam couldn't describe the words in picture nor clearly to himself what he felt that night, but it remained in his memory one of the chief events of his life. And I mean, think of what else he went through. The chief event was having dinner with some elves, essentially. But he was there when the ring was destroyed and they were saved by the eagles on Mount Doom, but this is the event that he remembers, is some shiny elves. But
so they're singing a song, Snow White, O Lady Clear, O Queen beyond the western seas, O light to us that wander here amid the world of woven trees, and talk about Gilthoniel and Elbereth. How'd I do there?
That's good. Also known as Varda. She's the sort of the spouse of Manwë, who's the lead the lead angel, I guess you'd say, archangel of Middle-earth. And she's sort of her, maybe the closest you could say is their patron saint. And so the light of Elbereth and Gilthonian, those are the different words they give her in the different Elvish languages. And so they always refer to her because the bringer of light and the creator of light is essentially Middle-earth. And so that's why they're they do it. And so the same reason, when Frodo has the vial of Gladriel, that's what he yells out because of she is there. Patron saint. I'm trying to think of a better word. I don't know if there's something, but yeah.
Guardian angel.
It's always kind of connected to starlight, right? Like there's a certain star in the sky that they associate with.
That's right. Yeah, the stars put in the sky, and then also it's the light of the trees of Valinor too. That they assess with that. I don't know how far deep we want to go into that, but there were these two trees that were essentially the daylight and the nighttime. They were eventually killed by Morgoth, and the progenitor of Shelob. And so when they hearken back to the light of Elbreth Gilthoniel, it harkens back to a better time, right? A time when there was light in the world, real light, not this fake light of the sun and the moon, but the light of the trees of Valinor. And so their music is always kind of heading back towards that light. And so the Vial of Gladriel is the smallest little part of that's left on the earth. Yeah.
That's all that Old Testament stuff that I didn't read. All that Silmarillion.
Yeah.
So the elves walk along with our hobbit heroes for a while, and they're like getting tired. Pippin keeps falling over, and the elves are like ninja, reaching their hands over and like picking him back up as he's walking. And then finally they say, "Come, now is the time for speech and merriment." And so they get to hang out and sing and eat.
The elves, every time I read this, the elves are a little cruel to the hobbits.
Yeah.
They're not nice people to them when they say, but we have no need of other company, and hobbits are so dull. They laughed. Oh man, who wants to spend time with them? But
they're just so on a different level. They're like important.
Right.
But I mean, that's what we're going to find out, is that the unimportant ones are the ones who are going to save the world,
they're the important ones.
I mean, and these are the guys who are essentially leaving Middle Earth. They're like, bye, you can take the ring. It's okay. We're heading out this way. We're not going to give you any help. But, there's Rivendell, Elrond. We'll go over that direction and see what you can do, but we're heading out.
The elves are all apathetic. They're just like, eh.
Yeah. Right.
Sam says it was the singing that went to my heart. So there's another reflection of what you were talking about, the importance of song. Frodo stays up talking to Gildor, and he's asking him questions about Bilbo, asking about the enemy.
And you can see Gildor, like he understands that if Gandalf hasn't told him something, he probably shouldn't tell him either at this point. So he just kind of the conversation, or that one question is halted at that point where he
pleads.
Gandalf didn't say anything. Yeah.
So then we have the really important line. He's talking about, can't we walk through our own shire in peace? And Gildor says, it is not your own shire. Others dwelt here before hobbits were, and others will dwell here again when hobbits are no more. The wide world is all about you. You can fence yourselves in, but you cannot forever fence it out.
Which I think is actually, like, thinking back to Tolkien's biography and some of his letters, that's, as he got older, that's what he felt like was happening to the world. Like, it was closing in on him, and he couldn't fence it out anymore in his life. And so it goes again to the little things in life, like the little pleasures of the world around him, smaller and smaller and smaller as he got older. And for the hobbits, it's a realization here too. I think he was seeing that in them, like, the world is bigger, but it's closing in on you as it gets bigger.
Yeah, they must have felt a lot like that with the two world wars, in England. Like, you can't just like live your little life on your farm anymore.
That's right.
The world is encroaching. And then,
I like that part where they're starting to leave the valley, and they're looking over the horizon, and Sam is seeing something he's never seen before. Like, all he knows is like the 20 miles around his little town.
Yeah, and that was normal. I mean, for a lot of human history, you didn't leave, you didn't go 10 miles outside your little area. Gildor says, in this meeting, there may be more than chance, but the purpose is not clear to me, and I fear to say too much. And then kind of concludes, where shall I find courage, asked Frodo. That is what I chiefly need. Courage is found in unlikely places, said Gildor. Be of good hope. They fall asleep, and that is the end of the chapter. So they're falling asleep in the woods with peace and happiness and hope because they're here with the elves.
Yeah. And this is really, I think it was mentioned earlier, where the movies diverge a lot from the books. That the plot line is far more deliberate in the books than it is in the movies, where we move really quickly. But now we've still got a lot to go to until we hit a certain point in the movies where you feel like things are starting to move again. Yeah.
So next week we are going to do a shortcut to mushrooms, which again is very different from the movie, and I love it. I actually love what they did with the farmer, and it's way different than what you see in the films.
Nice guy.
And it's a similar thing where we have the hobbits that are wanting to eat and hang out and take their time, but they're really kind of being rushed along. So That'll be next week. Please, if you want to subscribe, we have our subscriber portion coming up next. What did we decide to call it? The Tavern, something like
It's
that?
the Babylon Bee reads the Lord of the Rings Inn and Pub.
The Inn and Pub.
The Inn and Pub.
So we're gonna go on to the Inn and Pub now, where we're gonna
the script that Austin read.
Okay. Well, I guess he'll say it, but we're gonna go to the Inn and Pub, where we're gonna talk about.
we're going to the mailbag.
We're gonna go to the mailbag. We're gonna respond to some subscriber comments. We've been getting a lot of good feedback.
Yeah.
If you want to email us, podcast@babylonbee.com, or you want us, if you subscribe to the Babylon Bee, you can comment on the article that's on the site, and we will, when this video goes up, and we will talk about your questions in the next subscriber portion. So enjoy the book, chapter 4. Read it.
All right, guys. See you next time.
Coming up next, for Babylon Bee subscribers.
We didn't know how this was going to go because we were like, let's do a Lord of the Rings podcast because we love Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, my email inbox is like boom,
Just full.
boom, boom. Lord
So
of the
we
Rings.
really
The
appreciate
whole thing's Lord of the Rings now. I think people need to read Tolkien right
absolutely.
now. The world is just absolutely
It's the
insane.
best time. It's the best time.
So you need something where it's just like, hey, here's where the normalcy of life can be found. Like, this is reminding the little things in life. I think.
Oh, absolutely. Totally agree. What is the currency in Lord of the Rings? Is it Shire coin?
It's probably not fiat. It's probably
It's not
something,
fiat
It's
currency,
probably some hard gold and silver.
It's definitely that gold and silver coin.
Kyle and Dan would like to thank Seth and Dan Dillon for buying us cool swords and paying the bills, Adam Ford for creating our jobs, Ethan Nicole for creative direction, and all the writers at the Babylon Bee, Matthew McDavid for guiding studio operations, Patrick Green for show production, Caitlin Petty for laugh tracks, the Babylon Bee subscribers who make what we do possible, and you, the listener. Until next time, this is Austin Robertson, the voice of the Babylon Bee reads The Lord of the Rings, reminding you that there is some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. To watch or listen to the rest of this show, become a Babylon Bee subscriber at babylonbee.com/plans.